Welcome to the Capper Foundation Autism Summit. We are located in Topeka, Kansas, which is in the Midwest of the United States, and the Capper Foundation has been serving children and families with disabilities for over 100 years. Okay, so it's not going down there. Our mission is to build abilities and empower people of all ages with disabilities. We are happy to have you join us today as we share and talk about autism. The 2021 Autism Summit will focus on navigating change. We will be learning strategies to help individuals of all ages adapt to our communities as they reopen. Many of the strategies work for a variety of clients and are not just specific to children or people with autism. Today, we have three presenters from the Topeka area: Shelley Werner, Joel Rooks, and Linda Bergen. To start off, we need to share some quick general information. We have been hosting the Autism Summit annually since 2014, with the exception of the cancellation of 2020 due to the COVID. All of our summits have been held in Topeka and for families and professionals in this area. Our audience is usually parents and professionals from the Midwest. It has in the past included teachers, social workers, therapists, parents, foster parents, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, and school psychologists. This year, we surveyed the families we serve here at the Capper Foundation for input on their thoughts and concerns as we re-enter community. The areas we are addressing were what our families felt would be most valuable to them. The need for strategies was high on their list. So the certificates of attendance will be available after the presentation by emailing and requesting one. We will also have a short question and answer session on the end of the presentation. You're able to submit questions at any time by typing them in the chat box. We may not be able to respond to all of them with our limited time. This presentation is also being recorded so that it will be available on our website. You will be able to review the strategies and our references at a later time. Our objectives for today are broken down into 4 areas that we are addressing: navigating change, which is handling today's ever-changing societal expectations. Those objectives include change from the perspective of a person with autism spectrum disorder, how the brain impacts our ability to handle change, and strategies for different brain systems. Under social skills strategies, we will be looking at skills and norms in preparation for increased interaction with family and friends. The social skill objectives are how they will impact a broader perspective of loss and strategies for loss. Coping with emotions and anxiety, which will be helping individuals cope with emotions for return to public settings. Our objectives are to help them understand anxiety and strategies and approaches for working with anxiety. Under health and safety considerations, we will be reviewing guidelines to consider for peace of mind during these ever-changing times. So we will have considerations for health and safety and strategies for that as well. I will be making the first presentation on navigating change. I'm Linda Bergen, and I am a board certified behavior analyst here at the Capper Foundation. My background is as a special education teacher first, and then I became a board-certified behavior analyst. My passion has always been to help and work with children and families to provide a better life. I currently work with children with a variety of needs and supports, including but not specific to children with autism. So let's get started with the diagnosis of autism and how change is referenced in the DSM-5, which is the diagnosis criteria. Tells us right away how change impacts people on the autism spectrum. The DSM-5 is the standard reference that healthcare providers use to diagnose mental and behavioral conditions, including autism. So the first criteria B that I have listed here is restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interest or activities as manifested by at least two of the following in the criteria. One of the following four that is listed is excessive adherence to routine, ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behavior, or excessive resistance to change. You can see how change has a powerful effect on people living with autism. So let's look at change from the perspective of a person with autism. Many people with ASD have an insistence on sameness or regular routines. These are important to them. Disruptions in that routine can be very detrimental. What is it about change? What do they see? Change involves risk. You may not know for sure what you're going to get in return if you make a change. It may appear to you to be a risky situation. There becomes a trade-off. You have to give up something in order to make a change. You may have to give up the feeling of security. Change creates more processing. We do not always consider this, but processing is hard work. And when you encounter a change, you have to work at processing more information. If you are in a routine, you do not have to think as much about what you're doing. You know what is expected. Change can make rules invalid. People who operate in a rule-based manner depend on following the rules. When the rules change and they are no longer valid, the person may have difficulty with these new situations. Change creates stress or big feelings for all the above reasons. We will review some of these behaviors that demonstrate stress in just a moment. But could change be good? That is not how most people view change. However, we can help everyone with that and encourage people to view change as a positive or a growth in our comfort zone. Change goes two ways. As we all withdrew from the social settings because of COVID, we encountered change. We all have to understand that as we return to social settings, there will be changes again. Even if we're excited to return to school, community organizations, and family social events, things have changed. There are new rules in place. There are different routines. Even if a child has been in school, there will be changes as others return to their setting. So we want to help prepare. We are all here to share our thoughts and our strategies that we can practice and implement to address change. Again, these strategies are not autism specific. They will help anyone working to handle the change. Here are a few considerations to get us started talking about change. Not everyone is in the same place when it comes to change. We need to understand that not every strategy is meant for every child. We will be providing lots of strategies, and you will need to consider which ones might be most helpful to you and your family. First, we have to understand, where is the child operating from? What is their understanding? How much change can they handle? What are the best types of supports? We need to consider their cognitive capacity. We need to have an understanding in order to select the best strategies. A very important factor to keep in mind is to be aware of, if as a parent you are stressed, the child will pick up on that stress as well. They do not have to understand your language or what you're saying and the words that you use. They can pick up on your actions and your emotions and understand through those modes. This section is not specific to autism. Everyone operates on these systems. And I'm sharing a very simplified explanation of how our brain operates in these situations. So again, if you're interested in more information, please check it out. But all of us operate out of two different systems in our brain. The limbic system is the system deep in our brain and is our survival brain. It runs at a very fast pace and is the system responsible for fight, flight, and freeze modes. It is the integral system for processing emotions, motivation, and memory formation. It regulates our autonomic nervous system, which regulates our heartbeat, our blood pressure, and our gut. If we are stressed, we tend to operate from the limbic system. This can be with a planned change, like talking in front of a large group, or an unplanned change, like missing your connecting flight at an airport. We all have experienced this at some time or some point in our life. My experience was missing my first connecting flight. Our cognitive levels usually drop. I found I was having difficulty with reading and comprehension. The signage wasn't legible to me. I received instructions, but I wanted reassurance. I was operating out of my limbic system, which makes us have to work much harder. The other system is the prefrontal cortex. It is our control center. It is highly evolved part of our brain, and it runs at a slower pace. It is where you create thought out plans, organize things, put things in sequence. This is where we can prepare for things. It is an integral system for processing. It's where we really connect with what we want to do and how we want to do it. But when our feelings are too big and when our emotions are intense or on high, then our body turns off our prefrontal cortex. It's not a choice. It will shut down. We have strong anxiety, impulsive behaviors, and sometimes people say we lose it at this point. We will be functioning at a lower cognitive level than normal. Some people find it really difficult to follow instructions, read, listen to other people, and be able to use their thought processes to help them solve problems. So what behaviors do we see when this happens? These behaviors are common when we are operating out of our limbic system. We'll see meltdowns, increase in challenging behaviors, because we won't be able to pull up the words that we need to use in order to describe what is happening to us. So we revert to behaviors to tell people or show people. Some people will prefer isolation, or they will perseverate on what they want information on by asking over and over again for reassurance, or asking over and over again the same question. They will become clingy towards a person that they feel can provide them support. Anxiety becomes higher. We see decreased motivation in wanting to try new things or try to do what is asked of us. Our sleep changes, our appetite can change. We hear repetitive questions over and over again, and we have little interest in our favorite things. When I encountered my first session, when I realized I was operating out of my limbic system, I realized I was checking with more people for reassurance. The people in line in front of me at the airport, the people behind me. I felt high levels of anxiety. I no longer was hungry, that was for sure. And I asked repetitive questions of numerous people to make sure that I was making the proper arrangements to catch the next flight out. All of those are common behaviors we see when operating in the limbic system. So what do we do to help? Here are the strategies. So if we know that a person is working from the prefrontal cortex, when a change comes along, we can use these rational problem solving and logic thinking strategies. These work best for them. Be honest. It's okay to say, we don't know. Tell your children or the person you're working with, you are anxious too, if that's the case, but that you know we can work through it. Again, being honest is very important. It's okay to let them see you with a variety of emotions, because they can learn from that as well. Focus on the moment. For now, this is what we are going to do. Focus on what you can do at that moment and not try to predict what you can do down the line. Review what is staying the same. This is reassuring to know that dinner time is still going to be at the same time, bedtime will still be at the same time, and we will go through those processes just the same as we always have. Use visuals to increase understanding. This is important because, again, our cognitive level drops and the visuals will help us understand what's going on. The phones that we use these days are extremely valuable to be able to have pictures or to take pictures and to be able to put things together quickly for helping others understand what is coming or what's going to happen or how things are going to work. Using calendars. Here is the plan for today. Here's the plan for this week. can in itself be reassuring to people that have difficulty at this time with change. Offer choices so that they feel they have some control. Again, giving people the opportunity to make a choice can help them feel like they have a little control over the situation. If the person is operating from the limbic system, we will include that first set of strategies, but we will also need to include these strategies. You will help provide some of that logical thinking from the prefrontal cortex for the logical thinking strategies. So you can still model and do those strategies along with these. Acknowledge and validate feelings. Life is hard. I understand you don't like this. You can state things like that to help them validate their feelings, that it's okay to feel that way. But be sure and do not punish rigidity, big reactions, or anxiety. Remember, our prefrontal cortex will shut down, and our only option is to run off this limbic system. Label their emotions. Problem solve with them. Problem solving out loud helps children realize that adults and people around them are problem solving all the time. We need to model that things don't always work out the way we plan for them to do. It's a possibility and a good way to describe what you need to do is describe, name, and acknowledge all the feelings and emotions they are encountering for them. Describe what their face looks, describe that their body is tense, that you can see in their eyes that they are not feeling comfortable with things. Then give the emotion its name and acknowledge that it's okay to feel that way and that you are there to support and help them. Give them choices, open-ended or this and that. Again, if a child is accustomed to being able to do open-ended questions and make selections, during this time of stress, they may not and may need a this or that. For example, would you like an apple or a banana for snack rather than what do you want for snack? Practice mindfulness. This we'll have more information on this later in our presentation, but one that I like to do with my students is just a 3-2-1 kind of mindfulness with quick examples. Name 3 things you see, 2 things you hear, and 1 thing you smell. It redirects them, distracts them, and helps them focus on other things. We want to build connections and have engagement. One of the guidelines I try to help parents think about is if for every hour you try to spend 15 minutes of that in direct engagement with your child. Depends on their age, depends on their ability to be doing things on their own. But again, we need to consider that during stressful situations, that need for engagement and connection is going to increase over what it used to be. Last of all, we want to have rituals like our bedtime routines and things so that we play together. And then last of all, always remember to praise them for handling change as well as they do and giving it effort and trying to do their best. By modeling or setting household rules for handling the stress of change, we are guiding attitudes toward looking at change in a different light. So we want to address the stress of change. Frame things positively. Look for the positives. Point them out. Oh, we're learning new things. since we had to make this change, or this change has helped me learn how to do something different. Focus on what is happening and what you can control. Plan as much as you possibly can. Provide structure and maintain routines. Again, it's very important that we maintain bedtime routines, mealtime routines, routines for getting up in the morning and getting dressed. Those will help us along the way by providing things that they can predict will be going on every day. That provides comfort in our day. 4 is using visuals, and we want to increase the use of visuals, again, due to the fact that our cognitive skills may be dropping a little bit. We want to increase the use of visuals in our explanations of how things are going to happen, what we're going to do, what we want them to do, and our overall expectations of what is going to happen throughout the day. No complain rule. This is a guideline that a lot of families don't use, but I try to encourage with families. If we cannot fix it, let's not spend our time complaining about it or perseverating on it. But if you have an idea or a solution, let's talk. And that's a good way to help them focus on the positives rather than going over and over in their mind about what has gone wrong or different or negative towards the change. Build off of existing routines. Add in extra learning components. This is a great time if we have changes and we have to do more cleaning in our households. Add extra learning components for cleaning skills. This is a great time to add those in and change. Hand washing, again, this is a time to increase the level of skill that they have with hand washing or doing those kinds of things, because we can build on our existing routines. Keep small problems small. We want to take and make sure that if a child is able to solve a problem, and that is a skill that they have, that we ourselves don't move them backwards by providing that skill or that service for them. Try to keep the problems they encounter daily. For example, if they spill something on their clothes or something and need changed, and they've been accustomed to doing that, taking care of that small problem themselves, that we don't step in and provide that extra support when it's not needed, that they can continue to take care of those type of items on their own. So we're going to keep small problems small. We want people to see change as something good. We can do this by introducing novel items into situations and modeling calm and helping them feel comfortable and resilient with change. So again, by occasionally upping expectations, by changing how we go about entering a situation and making changes part of what we do in our everyday life, we can help children recognize change as a good thing. So next, we're going to go into social skills with Shelley Werner.
Good morning.
Down. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, got it. Okay. Technology. Okay. Okay, so I am Shelley Werner, and I'm an occupational therapist that works here in the Topeka area. And I also work with facilitating the assistive technology and autism services in my district, just to give you a little bit of my background. Okay, oops. All right. And we all know that social interactions and perspective taking are a struggle for a lot of our friends with autism spectrum disorder. And this last year has been quite a struggle. I know I was researching some background information on how to approach some of these things, especially, when you're not in direct contact with the kids, and how to coach their families on how to approach that. And so I ran across this resource that I wanted to share. The idea of loss and how it is perceived by those with ASD is very impactful. It's much bigger than I had realized. So when someone mentions loss, I think we tend to focus on death or think of death or loss of an object or something like that. In reading Carol Gray's Guide to Loss Learning in Children with ASD, she gave some great insight on the broader perspective of that. And I've attached this resource at the end so that you guys can read over it too. For today's discussion, I want to share information related specifically to day-to-day losses. Carol highlights how day-to-day losses that we face, like, losing your keys, not even getting to go to the favorite restaurant that you like, maybe a friend moving out of town. Those are maybe little, losses in the spectrum of things, a small problem, but we practice our coping when we're dealing with some of those things, or we can practice our coping with that. So I'll get the hang of this. There we go. So some of the unwelcome and unexpected losses in childhood that I just wanted to highlight may include, like, if you lost stuff like your socks or your crayons or your keys or something like that. Performance or competition loss, games, tests, assignments, how you handle your, performance on some of those things. Some of the stuff I think that's been more impacted in the last year is for instance, like loss of control. In a day-to-day school routine, you might lose your place in line, or maybe you lose control of your emotions based on how you're perceiving an event. But with the pandemic, going to school and out in the community has also been greatly affected us. And I think some of the kids don't understand that wasn't something that was in their control, or it was totally out of their control, and they wanted to go back to school, or they wanted to see their friends, and how much that perception is being affected. Loss of sharing, such as, turn taking, being around peers and shared activities and experiences. That's definitely been impacted in the last year. And lost opportunity for learning. There have been many things that have been canceled. Events that, everything from birthday parties to just, making that run to the grocery store kind of thing. And not having the peers and other people around to really model after and to practice our skills, so we keep our skills up as far as social skills and communication skills and such. Loss of routine, such as, like, on weekends and holidays, we might have had that natural occurring in the past, but during the pandemic, we completely shut down a lot of our school routines, a lot of, changed a lot of our home and our community routines. And that, I think, has definitely impacted some of our friends. Social losses, such as friendships, that social practice of greetings, conversations, practicing, I know I've seen that with some of my students, that practicing that voice volume, practicing that turn taking, that kind of thing. Okay, and all right. And then emotional losses, sometimes like loss of patience or confidence in certain situations, or trust, security, hope kind of thing. I know I've had a few students that we were trying to dig deeper into what maybe why they were having some of the emotions and intensity reactions to some things. And I think we've figured out that the abruptness in which a lot of our school and community events were just shut down, it really affected the trust of some of the kids, as far as, they don't know how to anticipate that for the future, or if that, is going to happen again. They're just not very trusting of some of that. Okay. And here we go. And kind of as, Linda had stated, Carol notes 3 specific things here that losses are, all losses are important, and it's something that we have to learn to deal with, and that, life is hard. That's kind of, part of just being in our communities, in our families. Loss is an opportunity for learning. And it's kind of a way that we need to kind of spin our perspective on how we're approaching loss. These day-to-day losses can set the tone for coping strategies and approaches to loss in the future, and to really be thinking through some of these that we're actually planning for the future. Children with ASD face a variety of challenges daily. Loss is at the center of many of these struggles when we really sit back and kind of look at how they're perceiving some of those things. For example, they may lose a crayon. Maybe they're not the line leader today like they were yesterday. They don't get to swing at recess. Lunch may not be what they wanted or thought it was to be. And that loss is an opportunity for learning that requires patience, builds confidence and skills, and underlyingly teaches compassion. As Linda was speaking, we're going to need to look at the broader perspective of what is happening with some of our friends, as far as, some children respond similar to their peers, but at a different intensity. Other children may respond in their own unique way based on their perspective or their understanding of what is happening here and what coping strategies they already have and they're trying to use. So we need to look back at the coping strategies and tools that the child has benefited from in the past, and start from there. Some kids have used social stories to rehearse situations and think through options, while others need to maybe visit and observe an event, talk through what they see. Some may need to have a transitional object, familiar person throughout the event. I know we've had to go back with some of my students and really think through, do they need to, maybe be in the classroom first and as the kids are coming in, so they can kind of see how this is playing out or how it might be different. For instance, like lunchtime is happening in the classrooms versus in the large cafeteria. So understanding and seeing how other people are handling it, how other people are coping, and how the routine is changed a little bit, but it's the same. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of give some specific strategies and idea examples. When guiding a child with ASD through these learning opportunities, we must focus on practical, positive control of their own experience. So if we can, if they really benefit from social stories, maybe they could assist to create one to talk about, and then we can point out what's the same, what's going to be different, kind of thing. And I know when kids are involved in creating it, it's using their words and their pictures, and kind of you get a nice idea of their perspective on things. And we must respect the child's perspective and really follow their lead. I know a lot of times as adults, we kind of want to remedy the situation, or, we think we know how to handle this, or what's being perceived. And so it's good to maybe ask the child what their thoughts are, what are their worries about what we're talking through. I know with some of my friends, we talked about, okay, the school day, you're going to get up, you're going to eat, you're going to get dressed, and then we're going to get on the bus, but the bus may look a little different. There might be only one person in the seat or such like that. And talking through what's the same, but what's different. And I'm going to try to share one of Carol Gray's social stories here, which I thought was just a really great example. All right. This is her story called Someday. It's a story of hope for children. And this reference is also in the reference list also. Okay. Thanks. Okay, there are times when kids ask questions and it seems like every answer has a someday in it. Kids may ask, when will school be open again? And adults may say something like, someday. um, Kids may ask, may we go to the donut shop? And the answer is, someday. Kids may ask, are we going on vacation? And adults may start their answer with, someday. Most of the time, someday is a better answer than probably not, and a whole lot better than never. Okay. Adults use someday when they know a day is coming, but it doesn't have a date yet. There are times when someday is the only true answer. When someday comes, the first thing we are going to do is, and they leave a place where the child can put what they want. I'm going to scroll back through here and just point out what I really liked about the story was, number one, it's stated in very much in the positive. And then also you see kids doing fun things and they have fun, happy faces they're modeling. You see a lot of different settings and genuine excitement for the future, I think. And some good pondering faces there. And maybe like this one, maybe a little bit of concern. So you could kind of talk about, maybe this little person is kind of worrying, but that's okay. And this person almost looks a little mad. And you could discuss that a little bit about, well, these things happen and how could we cope with that? All right. Okay, now friends, I just click on this X over here. That one right here. Ooh, yes. Okay. I'll get the hang of this. This is a little simpler social story, but this is definitely one, this is just one that I have in the resources also. I just liked, again, it doesn't have to be pictures. We can just use, clip art kinds of things, but these are, social distancing. What does that mean? It has a visual element and some good positive, the person on the right still talking to their friend, but they just have, a little more space between them. And this is one I thought was nice, specifically talking about when I get on the bus, I need to put on some hand sanitizer, just like it's a matter of fact, that's just something that's going to happen. Or maybe there might be just one person to a seat. So just kind of thinking through that. Okay. Now we're going to talk about some other strategies to consider. When we're addressing these social skills, if we, and coping with loss, when possible, if we can have, some advance notice, or we can give the kids some practice in how, or the adults, in practice on how to handle that, so talking about some specific situations, or if we are not working from a performance thing, but more of developing some skills, these are just some activity ideas we can use for that. These are just some games that I've used in the past. Zingo is just kind of fun. It's very much, you have to handle it. You take the little slider to get your tokens, very well defined whose turn it is. Same with Don't Wake Daddy kind of thing, that, you maybe roll the dice and there's only one button to push. So we can kind of have it well defined. Then you might step up with the Candyland, where maybe you could prearrange the cards, to make it a gradual, maybe challenging kind of event. But overall, we're modeling the positive response, those positive comments, the turn taking, and really expanding their understanding of some of the vocabulary that might be used in a social situation like that. So, and also another good strategy is to talk through or model through just natural occurring, things that happen through the week. For instance, like, if as a parent, I can't find my keys, I'm, setting an example right there of, do I panic? Do I, have a big reaction? Do I go, oh, it's okay, let's look for them. And I might be talking out loud, handling that self-talk I'm doing in my head out loud. Where did I have them last? where would be a good place to look? And then have the child go with you and actually go through that experience. And then maybe at the end, talk about, maybe I should keep my keys by the door. So little problem solving there and strategies on how to cope for next time. And as the child gains experience with this, then you can rehearse this as things come up for them, such as like, when they can't find their shoe. Initially you may tell the child first, what do we need to do? Oh, we need to look. Where did we have it? Where could we look? How might that be helpful? And do the modeling of some of the self-talk, maybe encourage them, what are we doing? Oh, we are looking in the, so that they're with you. All right. Okay. And we talked about using some accommodations or some supports that we've used in the past, such as visuals, social stories, checklists. This is just an example of a nice visual checklist kind of thing. I know I have a number of friends that greatly enjoy the dry erase feature where they can erase. It's kind of non-committal. I don't know. And they like erasing it after they're done. And these can be individualized to the routine. These can be carried, along with the routine. Just really nice options there. The other thing that I think is really important to think about is really having that clear vocabulary and to be reminded of the literalness of some of their thinking. I know I've had some experiences with some paraprofessionals that I work with that maybe say, oh, you're not the line leader today. Oh, maybe next time. Okay, what my friend heard was next time they were going to be the line leader. And so maybe we need to say someday, similar to our book, someday we might get to do that. Or, if I lost the game that I was playing with a friend and I'm angry about it, well, this time I lost, but when we play another day, we get to play again. I know some people try to maybe discount some of the feelings like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just a silly, I think we need to really validate the kids' feelings and give them some vocabulary so they can work through some of those things and make it much more of a cognitive, like Linda was saying, the prefrontal way of dealing with some of that. And that also leads into some of our flexible thinking, which is important for a lot of our students as far as, being able to think through situations that, that's what happened this time. What can I do next time? Kind of thing that might be done through, like, this is through analogies or a visual reference even. This I put in there as an example of the How Does Your Engine Run program. And it is comparing the way your body functions to a car engine. And, maybe this is a slow kind of thing, but then there's times when I can be fast. And then there's times when I'm just right. I'm ready to learn. And we need to, model through their day, oh, this is a slow time, or, oh, we're running fast. What can we do to slow down, kind of thing. I've have other students that have used the, size of your problem analogy and problem solving. And also just the, working through it, like, this is how I learn and grow, and so I know what to do next time, and kind of talking through it maybe after a situation. An example of how to do that, there we go, is this is called a consequence map. And it's just kind of looking at, there's a situation here, maybe the box on the left, when he's going to talk to his friend or be near his friend. And then we're trying out and kind of running a little mental rehearsal of, if I get, within arm's length of my friend, they will feel more comfortable. Or on the bottom of the choice, if I'm standing close to my friend, how might that make them feel? It's really playing through the perspective taking and the problem solving of that. A great lead-in that I have found very helpful is the What Should Danny Do books. These, there's 3 different books. I think there's probably 8 to 10 stories in each book. And I gave the picture on the right as an example of one of the pages. This is just a book about Danny and how he gets through his day. And with this one, his brother has the plate that he wanted with his pancakes on it. And so at the bottom, what should he do? Should he go and grab the plate? If he decides that's the plan, then he turns to page whatever it is there. But if he decides that the plate he has is okay, then he, might switch to that page. So it's kind of a self decision-making kind of story that plays out some reactions. I know this is, it talks about the power of choice. It gives some really nice vocabulary that we've been able to carry over across the day, and some great examples that have been really, really helpful for some of my kids to understand situations and how to step back and play it out. If I do this, what might happen? Or if I do this, what might happen? And what those reactions might look like from their perspective and from the perspective of the people that they're with. Okay. As much as we can, it's nice to try to draw associations, or some might call it to scaffold some of this so that we can help with the generalization of some of these skills, which we know is a struggle for a lot of our friends with autism. I kind of mentioned earlier, this is just an example of a visual schedule. And I know it's nice sometimes to talk through, if they're going back to school and school is going to look different, such I mentioned, like the lunchroom kind of situation, or how PE class might be handled differently, or, and you can kind of talk through with more emphasis, I think, on what's the same. Like, oh, we're still going to PE, we're still going to lunch, but this is how we might do it this time. Okay. If you need a more specific strategy, or there's going to be a time that might be a struggle, I've had some good luck creating like an I Can book or About Me book, where you have the kids, again, be a part of the creation, where they're taking pictures of maybe, this is where I used to eat lunch, and now I get to eat in the classroom at my desk, and this is what this might look like, and kind of talk through, how they might handle that. Would be one strategy. Another way to use the book is I've had the kids take pictures of things they like to do, things they can do. They're good at running, they're good at reading or something like that, or there are certain people in the environment that they really enjoy, or places they like to go. They like to go to McDonald's. They like to think about mom and dad. And this can be just a nice book that we can have as a calming moment to kind of think back to those things that make me happy, and to flip through and have as like a calming option. And on the right there, I put, I've also had good luck with using some mantras with some of my friends, just even simple ones that you can, Mrs. Werner will keep me safe. I am safe at school. And maybe that's just something we say periodically through the day, just that, I am safe, I'm okay. Or like this one is just maybe a little more evolved one. Okay. Last one. Okay, and I think Linda talked about this too, we need to be sure to affirm their feelings. Sometimes we may not know the cause of their distress or their anxiety, and it's not something that, maybe they even understand at this point. So we can use visuals to support, them expressing that they're feeling anxious, they're feeling mad, excited, this kind of thing, and have a visual there that they can use as a reference through the day to help them with that. And also, as other people in their environment, we need to also use the same thing, like, oh, this makes me feel, identify our feelings, talk about how we're coping and handling that. Okay. Yikes. All right. I'm going to switch to Joel now. Yay.
All right. Hello. My name is Joel Rooks, and I'm a licensed master social worker. Let me change the slide. I've worked in the state of Kansas as a social worker for 14 years now, first at the bachelor's level and for 4 years, and then the last 10 years has been as a master social worker. I've worked in the school system, the public school system for 10 years since I got my master's, and currently working with students and families in my district that have students that have autism. and then their families, and supporting them, at school, and then maybe, what things out in the community that might help them with their students, and providing resources, that sort of thing. Also support teachers with strategies and coming up with plans to improve the educational experience really of students with autism. So I am going to go ahead, and what I'm going to talk about is coping with emotions and anxiety, specifically talking about getting back out into the public setting. So we've been spending more time at home, obviously because of the pandemic, and have gone away from a lot of the things that we used to do, whether that's going and being in Boy Scouts, or going to the park and the zoo, or going to a family member's house. Those have been things that have been impacted in the last year in terms of our ability to do those things. So I'm going to talk again about coping with emotions and anxiety related to going back out into the public setting. So anxiety, again, anxiety and stress, those or anxiety and stress really is something that we all experience, right? And so I'm going to talk again, about a little bit about anxiety, and then also some strategies that are going to help individuals with autism cope with that anxiety and related to returning to the public. Again, anxiety is really a normal reaction to different events and situations that come up in our lives, right? We've all had those times where we feel anxious about something. It may be that we feel anxious about an exam that we're going to take next week. It could be that we're anxious about sending our child to school for the first time, or going on a date with somebody for the first time. There's different situations or activities that can create anxiety. And again, anxiety can be an okay thing, a normal feeling, and actually can help motivate us to do some things to help ourselves in those situations. It's really one of our internal warning systems, essentially, that alerts us to danger. There's something that's uncomfortable. So it alerts us to something that's danger or other threats, and prepares our bodies really to fight back something that we perceive as dangerous. It's really what Linda talked about earlier, that fight, flight, freeze response that can kick in when we start having feelings of anxiety or strong emotions. So again, we all have those feelings of anxiety in our lives, and it's part of life. It's okay. And for some individuals, though, that anxiety, those anxious feelings, may be more difficult to manage, and so it could be more constant. So it could be happening more often for them, and it could be impacting their life. And so we really want to think about what are some things that we can do to help those individuals manage their worries, and encourage them to use some strategies to deal with the worries and the anxiety that they're feeling. I'm not talking about clinical anxiety. So there's a difference. In some individuals may be experiencing clinical anxiety, and you may be at the point where you need more help than just yourself to help with your student or your child with anxious feelings. And that's okay. There's professionals out there that can help you. But we're really just going to talk about some things that you can do with your student or your child. All right. So some reasons or things that reasons why individuals with autism may feel anxious. We know that there's some differences in the way they process sensory things. So for individuals with autism, bright lights, loud noises, unfamiliar surroundings and situations could create, sensory overload and some of that anxiety. Some individuals may be undersensitive, which means maybe like things like hot temperatures or pain, they may not feel like most people would feel. So if I got hit in the arm, and most of the time I would probably feel that, right? But some may not even noticed that that had happened. So there could be that undersensitivity. There is also the oversensitivity. So again, those loud noises are overloading us, or the bright lights are over. It's just an overwhelming feeling that they're having, and that's most of the time probably what we'd say is more common for students with autism in terms of that causes anxiety. It would be more of the overload and the oversensitivity to some of the sensory stuff. So again, we're talking about, when we talk about sensory difference, we're talking about the sounds, the sights, the textures, the flavors, and the smells. Those are all things that could be impacted and create some anxiety for the individual. Difficulties with communication and social interactions. So we know, and Linda touched on it earlier, and I think Shelley did as well, is just that communication, social interactions are certainly something that can be a struggle at times for individuals with autism, and so anxiety may exacerbate, those difficulties in those areas. So it may be hard for them to sustain conversations, or can cause breakdowns in communication because they're feeling some of that anxiety related to engaging with others, right? And so, like we talked about, their cognitive level when they're feeling those anxious feelings may be diminished some. So that could be impacting their ability to engage. The next thing is just difficulties identifying emotions. We know that is something that is pretty prevalent with individuals with autism, and that difficulty to recognize their own feelings. Could also be recognizing other people's feelings as well. So, we know that not being able to identify our feelings may prevent us from doing something to help us regulate, right? So if I don't recognize that I'm getting upset or that I'm feeling anxious, I may not then take a step to do something to help myself, right? So that could be a struggle, oftentimes is a struggle for many individuals with autism. So again, continuing on that path of just some of the reasons they may feel anxious, right? And I know this has kind of been talked about already some, is that we know that uncertainty and we know that change and transition can cause some feelings of worry and confusion even for individuals, right? They may not know if not knowing what's going to happen next can cause confusion when it occurs, right? They don't know what to expect. Can be difficult, again, because we can't predict what's going to happen, what somebody is going to say, or what somebody will do. And so that can be challenging if we don't, for somebody with autism. So again, disruptions in routines, that's another thing that, and it could be what some people may think is a minor disruption, right? Is to some is a bigger deal, and that's okay. But that can cause some anxiety and some worry and make it difficult for individuals with autism because they don't necessarily always like that change. And all of us deal with that in some way, right? Change is hard. But disruptions may bring about, those feelings again of distress and confusion. It can be hard also to know, again, when we talk about social situations and unpredictable situations, to know what people are thinking and feeling. So individual autism may not be able to recognize the nonverbal communication that somebody's doing in a situation. And so that can make it a challenging time. So they, may cause some worry or some stress, or you may start to see some anxiety rise because they're not sure what's going on in a situation. And we also know that, when we talk about going back into public settings, it's going to require, right, a higher demand of communication and interaction, which can also lead to some anxiety about that. And again, not knowing what to expect in some of the situations that we go back into. So kind of like I was talking about earlier, really, we've gotten used to spending more time at home, right? And I think we can all agree that the pandemic really has disrupted most, if not all, of our typical public outings and activities, right? We had to adjust to really creating new routines and had to adjust to spending more time at home, which could be good. It was good for some, I'm sure. For others, it may have been more difficult. And we all had to, so pre-pandemic, really, though, a lot of our individuals, with autism may have been involved with things like, again, like I was mentioning earlier, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. They may have been going and doing play dates with friends, or going to the zoo, to the park, or maybe it was like a visit to, you were visiting your family. You had that on a regular schedule. You went to grandma's house or an uncle's house and spent time there on a regular basis pre-pandemic. And then that kind of all changed, right? And so we had to adjust and make changes to what we did. And now, and I know it's different. I think we have people from different places. So it's really dependent upon your community, right? And what's going on. I know here in Topeka, things are opening up more, right? And so we're going back into more of the public settings and being able to do some of the things that we used to do. So that's going to now create another disruption, right, to some extent, and it's going to bring about change, which again can be a good thing. I think most of us probably say we're ready for some of those things that we used to do, and getting out and doing those activities. So so with that change, again, we're going to probably have to set up routines and activities, new routines and activities, and really help prepare our individuals with autism with those changes that are going to occur. It may cause, it may cause some distress to get back out and doing some of the things that we used to do, but it also we can make it a good and positive thing. And we need to just be understanding that this may, again, to a lot of people may not seem like a big deal to get back out and do some of those things they used to do, but for some it is, and so that's okay. We're going to help them through that. So I'm going to talk briefly again about some things you might see as a result of really returning to some of these activities, some of the behaviors or feelings that people may have when thinking about going back into the public setting, and then talk about some strategies, really more heavily on the strategy side. So just briefly about what you might see. So as I think these are some things that have been already kind of mentioned in terms of some behaviors, but anxiety, again, we know that when we're feeling anxious or feeling worry, we're not really at our best in terms of our thinking and where we're at with being able to make decisions and problem solve and manage ourselves. So some of these things are, can come out of feeling anxious. So they an individual may get stuck on a certain question or certain statement related to going back out into public. So they may want to ask you the same question over and over about safety. Maybe it could be related to that. We've been talking to people, right, for a while now about staying safe, and that the COVID is, a germ, and we don't want to give it to people, and we don't want people to give it out, all those kind of things are things we've discussed with people. And so they may now be confused a little bit about, okay, we're going back into public, but isn't that still a big deal? And so they may ask you some of those questions or have worry about that, and really perseverate on some of that. You might see some meltdowns. Again, we're changing things again, and which again can be good, but it's also a big deal to them. And so you may get some challenging behaviors or possibly self-harm, and then they may have that feeling of needing to really control the situation and wanting things to be a certain way, right? We know that they like routine, and so that may come out of you talking about going out into the public setting again and going back to the zoo or going back to the park. You may also see some of that stemming rocking or spinning or flapping hands, because they're anxious about what's going to happen, because again, it's unpredictable to some extent. Maybe they remember what the zoo and the park were like, but they haven't been there in a while. And so that's something that may create some anxiety. All right, so now I'm just going to end here on strategies and approaches. I think first and foremost, I would say, and I know Lyndon and Shelley also said this, is really talking and framing things positively, right? We don't want to get stuck on the negative sides of and just focus on the health concerns and safety stuff. We want to touch on that, but we also want to talk about the good things that are going to happen when we get back out into the public, right? The things that they used to be able to do. If they love to play Uno at grandma's house, talk about that. Hey, we're going to get to go back and play Uno with grandma. We're going to get to go back and eat dinner with our family members that we haven't seen in a while, and really frame it in a positive way. Social stories is another thing that can help. I think another strategy for helping maybe decrease some of that anxiety and helping them understand, really what to, or really be able to guide them in some of their behavior in situations. So we know that even though we're going back into public settings more in some places, there's still different protocols that weren't there before, right? And that's ever changing as well. So there are social stories out there to help people understand how to wear masks or social distancing, the hand washing, those types of things that a lot of times are required in different places. Those can be good things to use with our individuals. When you think of social stories, we don't want to think of it as it's a one-time, you read it one time and they understand it, right? Or they get what you're saying. It's probably something that you read multiple times over and over to help understand them. And when I say over and over, I don't mean like literally back to back to back, but just that, you may do it over a week and touch on that social story. So think of it that way, in terms of it's not just a one-time shot and we've read the social story and so they understand the situation. You may have to read it multiple times. And again, that's going to be dependent on the person and what they need. So I will, and a couple slides, I think there's a lot of links. I don't think I'll probably show you them, but they're there for you to be able to look at some down the road and referenced. So other visual supports certainly are important for our individuals with autism. Again, when we think about when they're feeling anxious, and we're trying to talk them through something that may not always get through to them. So the visuals really can be beneficial in that type of situation, because their cognitive capacity may be diminished some. So that could be that we, have a calming strategies card, or like Shelley had, like the visual schedule. So it could be if we're going to our family member's house, we're going to have a schedule that shows, that we're going to eat dinner, then we're going to play, and then we're going to go home, right? And so it's very clear what the activities are that we're going to do when we're there, and kind of gives them that layout of what to expect. So that can be super important. And I think of, use visual supports, that have been helpful in the past. So if you are using calming strategies, again, you're not going to want to introduce that. You won't want to introduce that once you're in this new situation, right? You'll wanted to introduce that and practice those, that calming strategies card before going back into the public setting. Another thing that we can do to help people and decrease anxiety levels and self-soothe is really use like fidgets. It could be like squeezy balls. That could be putty, tangle toys. It's different really for every individual, right? And again, here I would say use what has already worked with them, right? You don't have to introduce something new, or if you don't have something you feel like working right now, try some things out and use them at home first before you start using them out in the public setting or in those public activities. So there are lots of different tools out there, and you just Google it. You can find plenty of different resources in terms of things or ideas for fidgets and things that might be sensory tools to help them kind of self-soothe. So relaxation methods. These methods are again, everything's individualized, right? So are different for each individual. They could be used. Certainly, they can be used when you're out at the park or out or at your family member's house. But it's certainly, again, I want to reiterate that it's important to have taught and practiced those things before that time, right? So if I introduce a relaxation method once they're in the middle of being upset, it probably won't go over well because they haven't been taught that, right, or haven't been used to trying that. So I really would practice that ahead of time and have those relaxation methods identified before you start using them. And so some examples of some things that would be relaxation methods, right? We could be counting slowly to 10. It could be like taking deep breaths. It could be running around the yard 5 times, looking at a collection of favorite or special things, maybe reading a favorite book, closing our eyes for a few moments, or maybe going to a quiet spot. Again, if you're at a family member's house, maybe you identify an area in the house where they can go when they're feeling upset that can help them relax, right? And that would be a helpful strategy to use. All right, so developing emotional awareness. So helping them identify and describe things happening in their body, right? It can be something that's a struggle for a lot of individuals. And so this could be really helping them identify physical things that are happening, that we could help them realize that maybe they're feeling worried when their palms are getting sweaty, or maybe it's when you have that internal feeling of a strange feeling in their stomach, or their heart beats faster, or maybe their hands are flapping. Those could be signs that they're feeling worry. And so we want to help them notice those things and be able to just, describe that emotion that goes with that. We could also, something you could try with somebody is drawing an outline of their body. And then inside that outline, you can help draw or write what happens in each part of the body when they feel worried or anxious, and that could be a good visual way of helping them describe and identify some of the feelings that are going on. And then you'll want to develop, again, some strategies for what they do when they're having those feelings, right? So just identifying our feelings isn't enough. So what are the things that we're going to do when we're feeling that way? When we're going back out in public, another thing that's helpful is just to bring something that's comforting. I think most of us probably say this is something we've done, right? Like, I can think of times where I've gone to in a stressful situation and I brought something that I know is just kind of comforting and had it in my pocket, right? And so for individuals with autism, bringing something that they like to do, or bringing an object, whatever that may be. Again, that's different for different people. But can help decrease some of those anxious feelings that they're having about going out and getting back around people. So mindfulness is another good one. This is really a good practice to use for all of us, right? And so being mindful is really about being present, focused and really relaxed. There's lots of benefits to it. I'll just name some. It can help us improve our self-regulation, really develop self-awareness. It can also teach coping skills and help us spend time noticing, or teach coping skills, sorry. So the things that we want to do is really, when we're talking about mindfulness, is really spend time noticing things that are going on around us. That could be noticing the visual stuff. That could be noticing something that we hear, something that we smell. That's what you're going to be doing when you're doing a mindfulness activity, right? And so there's a visual here that shows some examples of some things you can do. some activities like outdoors. So it could be the gardening or taking a nature walk. And so you're noticing things that are happening on that hiking trail that you're on. The sounds, do you hear the birds? Seeing, feeling what does the ground feel like under your feet? Those types of things, and describing those. Could be watching clouds or blowing bubbles, drawing chalk, all things that we can use. And again, you just want to find what are some things that are would be good for that individual. Okay, so these may not be all things that you try with somebody, but maybe there are some things that you can identify that would be helpful. The last thing on this slide is just teaching social distancing and wearing masks. And I think I mentioned that already. And so again, in a couple of slides, there's several social stories that may be beneficial to share with an individual and use before going out and getting back out into the public setting. Lastly, in terms of strategies and approaches, I reiterate what Linda and Shelley really said, is acknowledge and validate feelings. So you may, bring up that you're going back to grandma's house, right? And there may be some excitement about that. And then all of a sudden you start to realize that then they start expressing different feelings about it, and maybe worries, and you start to see some anxiety, and that's okay. We're going to validate that, understand you're upset or understand you're feeling anxious. It's important to acknowledge that. Specific praise. So when you're out doing the things that you used to do, is really giving them praise for trying things and for getting out there and to the things that they used to do. You could also try to just, maybe before you spent an hour doing an activity at the park, maybe you shorten that and not make it a bigger deal and build on success, right? And instead of making it a longer experience, just have a shorter experience. That's more successful, and then build back time into the amount of time that you spent doing the activity you used to do. Again, here's the link, the slides. I think these will be shared with you. I'm not going to hit on all of them. You guys are smart and can read through them, and so there's too many to do that to go over there. But here are a bunch. This one's just about COVID-19. At this point, you probably they know, most of them probably know about it. But here's some there's a video and some social stories related to that might help. So some of these are meant for younger kids. Some are meant for maybe adolescents, and then also some for adults. And you may find that, hey, there's something here that you like that you could adapt yourself and create for the individual that you're working with, or your child. Here's some social stories related to social distancing, and then hygiene as well. We know how that has been really pushed, and so here's some things that might help people with understanding that, and then also the wearing masks. So I appreciate your time. I'm going to turn it back over to Linda here to wrap up.
So we're going to finish up with health safety considerations. And this was our #1 top priority when we surveyed our families here at the Capper Foundation as to their #1 concern for re-entering communities as the COVID changed things again. So we all may have different reasons why we're re-entering community. And so we want to think about those and consider the following things. So are we re-entering community for teaching our children about community around them, building the social connections, helping build social competencies because of economic situations, and support services? Those are all just a few of the reasons we might be considering re-entering a lot of community activities. So when we do that, the relationship of the risk versus the safety will be what is considered on an individual basis. We have individual considerations to take into account. We all have different home and family situations. We all have different risk factors within our families. We all receive different types of information from different sources to base our considerations on, and we all place different values on different types of activities. However, we all agree that the health and safety of people is of high priority, and we want to build independence and we want to engage in community. So this might be with the family, it might be educational settings, work and employment settings, recreational activities, or healthcare. Each one of those has different values for us and different risks. So how do we start addressing health and safety? Guidelines differ greatly from one location to the next. Even here within our small area, school districts have provided different types of service models. Information sources vary greatly. The needs for each individual family also differs. So we are offering you considerations for you to make your own decisions on. This is also for just this moment in time. Things can and will change as more information becomes available through the study of the health and wellness and those issues. So the CDC, or Center for Disease Control, put out the following list for us. And these are considerations for peace of mind during these ever-changing times. So we're going to review some of them and then give you strategies on the first three. But they consider these to be the main considerations you should take into account: wearing a mask, hand washing, maintaining distance, covering your coughs and sneezes, getting vaccinated, avoiding crowds and poor ventilated spaces, cleaning and disinfecting, and monitoring your health. Again, these are the ones for at this point in time. We have strategies for helping others to wear masks. So we're going to talk about choosing a mask and choosing these strategies to help them with. So first, we're going to model wearing a mask. Others will become more comfortable the more they see other people wear a mask. It will increase their ability to understand what we are asking them to do, as well as their comfort zone. 2, allow play with masks. Putting masks on dolls, stuffed animals, playing with them in their own play as they pretend to go out into public before they actually go can increase the likelihood that they will wear a mask and that they will be comfortable wearing the mask. Social stories, as mentioned before, about wearing masks are out and available online. Using the first then strategy allows us to kind of help set guidelines. Always remember that the then component needs to be highly motivating and fun. Allow them to choose the mask. This again gives them some control. It gives us a peek into their personality. It can be fun, using their favorite colors, their favorite characters, and people can show their identity with the use of their own mask. The last one, reward the wearing of a mask if needed. Again, I always encourage positive praise and connecting that with what the person enjoys. and how cool they look, and positive comments helps build that ability to wear a mask. But sometimes we have to do a more gradual presentation of a mask. So this is an additional kind of task analysis in order to build tolerance for a mask. First, we're going to work on seeing the mask, and that can be worn on other people or just having it around the house, having it in their space so that they can see it. Touch the mask to their face. Again, this might be for people that are not able to express their likes or dislikes at this point in time, but just being able to feel it at some point. Then again, looping it around one ear, then both ears, and increasing wearing time. When you do the increasing of wearing time, this can be done with just a simple hand count on, finger count on your hand of wearing it till I count to 5 just to get started. Or you can move on to visual timers and see how long they might be able to wear it and have it on. Praise effort for every step. Again, the requirement of wearing mask is we want to build that tolerance and increase the wearing of mask, but we need praise for even the slightest effort. It's important to praise effort and not always just success. So we're going to praise that you tried, you held it for a few minutes, and it may be a practice that we do several times a day, over days, but we're going to continue to try to build that wearing time with lots of praise. And here's the guidance for a list of hand washing practices. Again, this is put out from the CDC. Sometimes the schools here are using a lot of sanitizer instead of hand washing. They may be doing it hourly, but here are the recommended times that we need to be thinking about hand washing or encouraging others to hand wash: before eating and preparing food, before touching your face, after using the restroom, after leaving a public place, after blowing your nose, coughing or sneezing, after handling your mask, after changing a diaper or caring for someone who is ill, after touching animals or pets. The third section we're going to break down a little bit is social distancing. First of all, it's know before you go. This has become a practice that a lot of us have picked up as a change in knowing what the requirements are before we go, checking online, giving the location a call in advance so that we are aware of the expectations for distancing or scheduling or mask wearing in advance before we enter a new place or a place we've been before. Number 2 is preparing for transportation. Again, this is different in all different locations. For mass transit, it is an area where there is lots of considerations and things to take into account if you decide to travel. So if you're taking different types of mass transit, then again, the requirements for masks, the distancing, how to choose when to take it, and what times might have fewer people on the transportation might be a consideration you want to take into account. Number 3 is limit contact while running errands. Again, that might be best to use and consider drive-through services, curbside pickup, and delivery services as an option, and to work towards those kinds of ways to run errands. The next one, choose safe and social activities. Again, just your consideration as to what works for you and your family, what risks you're willing to take if you're going to an outdoor activity, if you can maintain that social distancing. Those will all be important for you to consider as your own family deals with those situations. Keep distance at events. Help teach and make others aware of the taped markings on the floor or the walls when you go. Point those out so that others understand those designated distances and how to understand the requirements that are put up for the buildings that you enter. If you happen to have a student who is a literal thinker, this sign might need some explanation. And so it's important to take into account how other people perceive what the instructions are. So keeping the distance of at least one alligator may be a little more difficult for others to understand. And then stay distance while active. Again, I think it's great for people to get out and be on trails and bike and hike and do all those wonderful activities. But again, we have to keep in mind maybe there are set paths now, one-way directions, distances required between groups, those kinds of things. So we want to continue to keep those in mind and help share that information with others. Here are some other examples. Again, knowing that you've been to the park before and that you're going again, we may be going with our old understandings or our thoughts of how it was in the past. And if there are new guidelines, we need to think about those, explaining those new expectations. We need to provide those concrete examples, the markings on the floor, the arrows with the directions for the way the business prefers the traffic to flow through a grocery store. Those kinds of things need to be pointed out and shared so that we're aware of what those mean. Again, over and over again, using visuals for giving people space, using visuals to help people understand. Most children can understand the 2 arm lengths is a good guide, but again, that's going to be different for different children. So marks on the floor in hallways or in aisles at the store or at checkout counters, children are picking up quickly on those and understand those. Sharing the social stories, again, you're going to hear some of the similar types of strategies over and over again because these are the ones that work with a lot of our children. And praise and reward expected behaviors. So when children are doing a good job, make sure and point that out. Point out what you are expecting when they perform those activities for you. So resiliency is really what we're after as we all re-enter society, that we can make those changes, that we have been able to withstand the change. And I've just always like this visual of bend with the wind, but don't break in the storm. These are the type of things we want to do. We know the rules have changed and loss has taken place. And really and truly, loss is an opportunity to grow. So even though we know more change is always coming. We have to think about how we present change to other people. There's a story about traveling from New York to California, and we all want to know the path or the way, and we know there are highways that get us from one location to the next. But if we were to only travel at night and we were in the dark and we could only see the distance of our headlights, we still have to trust that we can handle the change of the terrain and the change of the road in our path from one place to the next. We would make it from New York to California on the highways and the roads, going from one place to another, but we can only see for a short distance ahead of us. But we can tolerate the change and know that we can adapt as we proceed. We have to also trust and have our strategies in line for getting from one place to the other and dealing with change along the way. So change can be useful. It can be helpful, powerful, rewarding, encouraging, very beneficial, and change can be good for everyone. There are times that we struggle with it, and we need our supports for ourselves and others to get through it, but we can handle change as it comes toward us. We do have several pages here of references, and we'll show you those, but you will also be able to access these at a later date. So I want to show you the general information again, and we'll get ready for some questions and answers if we have them. But the general information is that we're going to have certificates of attendance. All you have to do is email and request those. This video is on recording, and you're able to call or you're able to go to the email, and next week it should be up so that you can look up these references and stop the video and be able to tell what information you want to look up and find more information about. So right now, if we have any questions, we're going to be happy to take those, and you can write those in your chat box, and then we'll go from there.
We have one question so far. Vicki asked, any suggestions for helping toddlers or preschoolers wear a mask?
I would go back to that. Start with play. Have them have the masks in your house area, in your play area. Let them become very comfortable holding them before you ever try to put them on their face. Encourage them to put them on stuffed animals, on the dolls. Talk about where they go, and on our ears and over our nose and our mouth, and maybe play some type of game where you talk about it. I know lots of preschool teachers are very creative in songwriting and being able to turn topics into songs with simple tunes. So maybe come up with a song about wearing a mask. Any other ideas? Are there any other questions that we might have from anyone? No. Well, we really appreciate you joining us today. We want to thank you for your friendship and partnership. We want to thank our other presenters here that have taken their time to share their knowledge and information on what they do and how they work with children on the autism spectrum. We hope that we've been able to provide you with strategies and ideas that can help you work with children and adults and your own family members as far as change is concerned.